So I guess to start, a little bit of background on me. Actually, Adrian and I kind of had a similar upcoming. I was an Infusionsoft consultant like 12 years ago and became very frustrated with Infusionsoft. And I was doing a lot of work with WordPress clients who were trying to do their marketing automation through Infusionsoft. And it was kind of this like hodgepodge of different apps and services and webhooks to make everything work together. So I had a kind of a toolkit that we've been using with clients for many years to help them, get their WooCommerce order data into Infusionsoft or sync their members with Infusionsoft and that sort of thing. And about 8 years or so ago, I bundled that up into a plugin, which is WP Fusion. And I am still working on it today, every day. And it has gotten quite big, which is really cool. So what our mission started as being kind of like an all-in-one solution, like the last stop you have to go to integrate whatever's going on your WordPress site, LMS, membership platform, store, with whatever software you're using to drive your automated email marketing, update your Facebook audiences, just basically like whatever cloud-based marketing automation tool you're using. And so, yeah, over the last 8 years, we've added support for, I think, like 54 different cloud-based platforms. So that's been great. Where we've had the relationship with Groundhogg has been interesting and actually surprisingly productive, and that kind of leads into the headless thing. Of course, Groundhogg is a WordPress plugin, so you don't really need that much help to integrate Groundhogg with the rest of WordPress. When Groundhogg first came out, we were one of the first companies to build an integration with it, and back then Groundhogg didn't have so many features for controlling access to content using tags or detecting changes in membership levels in some the more obscure membership plugins. And so, we always had a segment of customers using WP Fusion to connect Groundhogg to the rest of their plugins. But, like the writing was on the wall for the effectiveness of that as something we wanted to put a lot of time into, just because it's easy and natural for Groundhogg to add these integrations themselves and make it an add-on on their own. So it wasn't really, it was something like, we kept working, but it wasn't really where we were focused. We were focused more on like enterprise solutions like HubSpot and Salesforce and that kind of thing. But then beginning last year, we started to have conversations with people basically saying like, Groundhogg has a REST API and I'm being held back by the fact that like now I have to have my store and my membership and my courses and Groundhogg all on the same site if I want to run funnels and benchmarks around my customer data. And that's starting to limit me because, maybe I want to open a new business on another site, or, I just want to separate things for performance or security or whatever. And so we, I guess probably about a year ago, I don't remember exactly when. Anyway, so we rewrote our Groundhogg integration so that it works using the same technologies that we use with our cloud-based platform integrations. So now you can connect to Groundhogg on any different site or connect multiple sites to one install Groundhogg. So that's been cool. And I think now it's a really obvious use case for Groundhogg with WP Fusion. Probably most people won't need to set it up like that. But now people who are worried about scaling with Groundhogg have an option that they can scale into by breaking it up into another site. And and it gives us sort of like a clear use case of something that can't be done with just Groundhogg alone and what WP Fusion is good for. So that's kind of like the history of what's gotten us to here. I will go, I wrote a blog post on this yesterday that I shared in our group. And so I'm just going to kind of go through the structure of that blog post and explain what headless means in terms of WordPress and a CRM. What are the benefits of having Groundhogg on the same site? What are the benefits of splitting it up into multiple sites? And then if we have time, I can show, I can just live or share my screen and show a couple of examples of like WooCommerce checkout on site A, creating a contact record in Groundhogg on site B, or we can run webhooks from Groundhogg to another site to create a new WordPress user. For example, if somebody, maybe you have an opt-in form that collects an email address, and then you want to run a funnel that creates a temporary user account for them to try out a course free for 7 days, something like that. So it's kind of cool. You can have Groundhogg running standalone on a subdomain, and it's controlling the access and member experience across multiple websites, and then data is all feeding back into the contact record in Groundhogg. So I will get started with that. Is there any questions or anything at the moment? Everybody can hear me fine. I don't like using a headset usually, but I think the audio in here is okay. All right, great. So what do we mean by headless? So you might have heard the term Headless WordPress or Headless CMS. And the basic idea there is that the WordPress admin is really good for managing your content, your post types, and your taxonomies, and is content management. And normally the front end of your WordPress website, it's all part of the same application. Like there's one file that loads the front end and one file that loads the back end. And that's fine for a lot of sites, but especially in like modern web development, some people, for either performance or security, or just because it simplifies the development process in larger organizations, they want to separate the front-facing part of the site from the admin. So WordPress is used to administer the content, and then you can use whatever you want to build the front of the site. Usually it's a JavaScript framework like React or Vue or something like that. And so that's kind of hot right now, that companies are building front ends for WordPress sites that are entirely custom, and then they communicate with the WordPress backend over the WordPress REST APIs. So what we're doing with Groundhogg is kind of similar. Instead of having your CRM and your email campaigns and your automation steps and weights and all of that, sharing an admin with the place where you publish your blog posts and manage your WooCommerce products and run your reports, what we're doing is, and we're seeing more people doing this, is setting up Groundhogg on a subdomain where it's just like groundhogg.mysite.com or crm.mysite.com. And the only thing running there is Groundhogg, and that's where all of your contact information lives and your emails are sent and everything. And then WP Fusion is going to connect your other websites to that over the REST API and feed in your customer data, and then trigger automations and emails and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, it's kind of cool. Let's see. So what's the next? Maybe I'll just like sort of share my post as we go through it. I won't literally read it for you, but just so you can sort of see the structure. Is there any complication to run both Groundhogg and Infusionsoft at the same time? The tricky part with running two things at the same time is that, let's say, for example, someone unsubscribes in Groundhogg from an email that you sent there. How do you communicate that unsubscribe over to Infusionsoft, or do you? And if you don't, are they going to be upset when you continue sending them marketing emails? So sending data to two platforms at once is not so difficult, but if something were to change in Infusionsoft in a campaign, how do you get that back in the Groundhogg to make sure that your funnel steps and conditions react appropriately? That can be quite difficult. Here's the link to the post. I'll just put it into the chat. And then, yeah, so then I'll just sort of share my screen as I go through it to help me keep from getting too off track. And if anybody has any questions, just shout out. All right, let's see, share. Yeah. So this is just like saying in the beginning, like this is what we're talking about when we talk about headless CRM. It's the idea of decoupling the platform that runs Groundhogg from the place where you sell your products or deliver your courses. As you can see in the screenshot, here, this would be a typical Groundhogg site where you've got Groundhogg running alongside LearnDash, alongside WooCommerce, alongside your page builder, which is fine, and it's certainly easy to set up. One of the things to be concerned about is scalability. If let's say you've got a big launch going on and you've got 100 people checking out per hour in WooCommerce, and that's running all sorts of stuff. And then the WooCommerce actions also need to trigger automations that are sending out thank you emails or prompts to review or stuff like that. The email sending process, I mean, it works pretty well with Groundhogg, it's pretty efficient, but it can start to slow down the checkout, or the checkout can start to delay the rate at which your funnel steps run. And the solution to this, you can upgrade your hosting, of course, just throw more resources at it. But like you say in this post, it's the tools that we use to make a sales page work super fast and get that conversion are heavily caching it, even caching it at different data centers around the world using Cloudflare. And we're trying to serve the same content to a lot of people really, really fast. And running marketing automations inside of WordPress is kind of a different set of technology. You actually, it's okay if it runs a little bit slower, but you need it to run every time. You need it to not be cached. If you have emails that are set to go out at a specific date and time, you need to know that they're going to go out at that time. So it can be tricky to try and scale up a server in such a way that it can do this one part really, really fast and efficiently, and this other part maybe a little slower but very accurately. Link is not visible in chat. Well, I did put it there. Let me try once more. Hold on. I'll just put this with link. I hope that works. Otherwise, I've never done a Zoom in this format before, so maybe I'm posting it wrong. It does say that everybody, the host and all. Oh, sorry. I'm posting to host and panelists. One second. I got this. To everyone. There you go. You should have it now. Great. Okay. Always learning. Right. So where was I? So I think that if you are, you have a store or yeah, Buddy Boss forums. Yeah. So I'll get to that. We have an example of that in this post. So I'll touch on that. And the question of how many sites to split your site into is maybe a bigger one than we could cover this time, but we'll try. Anyway, so if you've got a small, if you've got a WooCommerce shop or even like an LMS with only 100 active users online at the same time, I definitely recommend just do it all on one website. And pay for the medium tier hosting plan. The people check out through WooCommerce, their data goes directly into Groundhogg. You don't need any other plugin to integrate that. They get access to their courses immediately. That's the way to go if you're just getting started. If as you grow, and anybody here who runs a membership site, and especially Buddy Boss, starts to notice things start to get kind of slow. And that's when you may want to take a look at breaking things out into multiple components. What I would say is, yeah, 30,000 members. Yeah, so that's a good time to start thinking about maybe optimizing the tech stack a little bit. There's a lot of debate over whether to separate your sales site from your courses site. That is a little bit more complex, and I'll probably write on that at a future date, just because you need to keep the user information and their passwords and their access in sync between the WooCommerce site and the BuddyBoss site. So if somebody has a subscription payment failure over here, then that needs to revoke access over here. And if they log in over here, they need to know how to get back to the WooCommerce site in order to update the payment details. So that's kind of like the advanced class. But I think splitting off Groundhogg is actually quite straightforward, because what you're really only doing is separating the marketing component from the user component. So say, for example, in this scenario, I think I have a little chart here. We can ignore site B in this graphic for now. Just imagine you just have a WooCommerce on site A, and then you have Groundhogg running separately. All of the authenticated user information, customer info, stored credit cards, billing stuff, like all of the complicated stuff that's hard to move around, stays in one website. So people can log in, make a payment, access the content, update their details, everything like that. They wouldn't know that there's another site. But you can have Groundhogg connected via WPFusion to this other site, and what that's doing is syncing back and forth their tags, their purchase history, their page views is something that we're working on that's not quite ready yet. And so in Groundhogg, you can have the information that you need as a site admin or as a business owner, all of the relevant marketing info, and you can use that to drive your marketing campaigns. But it doesn't complicate the user experience at all anyway. They would literally not know any different whether you were running Groundhogg on the same site as the store or on a separate one. How hard is it to split up later? And so that's what I like. A lot of people who are launching their course or launching a website, they try to build charts like this and say, I'm going to need a subdomain for this and a subdomain for that. It's very, very difficult to merge two sites together later. Like, let's say I started out with this scenario in this picture, and I realized, man, this is such a pain keeping the WooCommerce purchase info synced over to BuddyBoss. I just want to merge that back together. I'll keep Groundhogg separate, but now I want the checkout and the courses on the same domain. That's really, really difficult, because you'll have conflicts between user IDs and conflicts between post IDs, and it's not a lot of fun. But if you start with just a single site, I think, so let's go to my test site here. So this is, and I think my screen is still showing, yeah. So this is kind of like my generic test site. I've got this set up right now as the WooCommerce site. Imagine if I had launched this all in one. And you can see it's slow. This illustrates my point. And we had Groundhogg installed on here. It's just deactivated at the moment. But so imagine Groundhogg is active and it's running and everything is here. And I decide, okay, I want to try to split this off into a subdomain. It's really easy to just copy out the Groundhogg database tables and export your settings and move that to the subdomain and then just deactivate the plugin here. You don't have to worry about any conflicting IDs or anything like that, because you're copying it over to a fresh site. So it's super easy to take a slow site and split it into two. It's quite difficult to take two sites that are too hard to maintain and merge them back into one. So that is what I would recommend. I don't think you would start with two sites like this, like right out of the gate, unless like you have some experience with this kind of stuff and you know that that's going to happen eventually. I would say, start with the standard, everything all on one site, and then if you find that you're having resource problems or the kind of access that you need to Groundhogg CRM, or even the people that you need accessing Groundhogg CRM are not the same types of people or access that you need to access the e-commerce site, then that's a good case to split them. It's relatively straightforward. So yeah, I guess if you didn't see it, it doesn't count. So we can just show you sort of what the setup looks like and like what we've done in terms of WP Fusion and how that works. I will So what I have here is, I should put different icons in these, right? This is my bare bones, nothing going on CRM website with Groundhogg installed. And you can see this is it. I've got forced login active. So actually, you can't even visit the site. It just takes you straight to a login page. So nobody would ever find it or access it. So you could put that "don't look for me on Google" thing. So what I'll do over here on my WooCommerce site, I'll just reset the settings so you can kind of see how it works from the beginning. Great. So yeah, I'm here. I've got WooCommerce. I'm selling stuff. And now I've set up Groundhogg on Subdomain, and I want to start syncing customers into Groundhogg. Go in here. These are all the CRMs we support. Select Groundhogg. Put in the URL. And we can just click authorize. And so see, that's taken me directly to the CRM site. And it gives this little prompt saying an application would like to connect. And we'll say, yeah, we'll call it WPFusion WooCommerce plus Buddy Boss, and say I approve. So that's authorized. And now I'm back here on the WooCommerce site. The application credentials have been generated, and that automatically established the API connection. Just checking the questions. Cool. All good. So now the settings have saved. I think like half of you in this group are already WPFusion users, but I'll go through a quick tour. We kind of have two main components. Over here, this is a list of all of your data in WordPress on the left, and then all of your fields in Groundhogg on the CRM site on the right. Some stuff is selected by default. So for example, the WooCommerce fields, we can just turn those on here. We have a lot of, for example, you can track lead sources. So if somebody came to the sales site and then converted, made a purchase, we can sync their Google Analytics ad data over to Groundhogg on the CRM site and do some cool stuff with that. We support about 100 different plugins, or maybe 115. So each plugin you have active will add its own settings. Like for example, here we have LearnDash active, so we can sync data about the last lesson and course completed over to Groundhogg. And of course, that can be used to trigger additional follow-ups. You know, say someone logged in and they did the first lesson, but then a week goes by and they haven't updated the last lesson completed date, then we can send them an automated email and say, hey, is everything okay? Do you need some help? Any BuddyPress fields that you've created can be synced over. But anyway, we'll just do the default basic WooCommerce here. And yeah, quick tour of the general settings. What this is basically just saying that the defaults are generally good. When somebody makes a purchase or signs up over here, they're going to get synced to Groundhogg over here automatically. And we have some options for protecting content based on Groundhogg tags. So you can actually build a membership site, a very simple membership site by applying a tag to a contact over here. And then over in WPFusion, we give you a lot of options for saying this tag is required to access content. It's a little off topic for today, so we'll pass that. But anyway, so I've set it up with WooCommerce, and I've got a sample product here, which is a hoodie. And WPFusion adds a settings panel to a lot of different plugins. In this case, we have options for applying tags based on the purchase. And if we were doing subscriptions, we could even do stuff like apply tags when subscriptions are canceled or paused. In this list, these are all of the tags that have been created over here on the Groundhogg site. So if I want to add a new tag, I can just create it here, and it will show up over here when editing the product. So in this case, we'll just do purchased hoodie, and let's buy it just to see. Right, okay, so I'm gonna purchase the hoodie, test 4242. Pretty sure that's in test mode. Yeah, okay. Messed that up, I did direct bank transfer. Sorry, hold on one second. That's the one. Yeah, great. And go. So I've checked out here on the store. If you were using Groundhogg in the traditional way, Groundhogg has a native integration for this, and it would have detected it automatically. And in the back end of this test site, I could go to Groundhogg here, and I would see the contact. What WPFusion is doing is detecting the order and then sending it to Groundhogg on the CRM site over the REST API. So you can see here, it's detected this order. These are the fields we just enabled with the billing address. Any other custom fields you've added to your checkout or enabled lead source tracking, etc., would appear there. And then applying tags. Right here in the logs, I've got it's updating contact ID 6 was the contact that was created. I can just click on that, and I'm taken over here to the CRM site where the contact has been created with their information. They're tagged here as having purchased the hoodie. We're also using our new plugin, which is called event tracking, which Adrian was kind enough to add support for in the latest Groundhogg betas. So it will detect automatically when WPFusion is sent over an event like this. And we can do tons of events like logged in or abandoned product in cart, or even we're working on Gaming Press and Buddy Boss integrations at the moment. So if somebody did their first forum post, you can see that here in the timeline with the topic of the post, or if somebody joined a social group or left a social group. We're building up a cool list of all of these different triggers and stuff like that that you can sync over and see. Of course, tags are great, but you know, we see purchase hoodie, but we don't see when or how much they paid for it. So this is something we're going to be working on a lot over the next 6 months, is adding a bunch of triggers like this that can show up and give you a context of what happened in the history of a person. Now, so here's where the limitations are. Can you refund from Groundhogg? No. So the way that we're able to do this and to make this work with 115 plugins is we use the same kind of underlying infrastructure that we use to communicate with ActiveCampaign or Salesforce or whatever. So the only real thing that we've changed here is the API calls that go to Groundhogg. So for example, even if we had created a user account on this site at checkout, Groundhogg wouldn't see that user account here. So, and some other things like, for example, the sales reporting, we don't support that at the moment with Groundhogg. If you're used to using WP Fusion with with ActiveCampaign or a cloud-based CRM, it's the exact same level of integration. Custom fields, tags, events, yeah, totally, and bidirectionally syncing that data. But things that you might be used to from Groundhogg's native integrations, like, yeah, being able to manage WooCommerce orders or send shipping updates and stuff like that from the CRM, that's not possible because it's not open, it's not standardized along the APIs that we use for these other platforms. Some stuff, now that we have the groundwork in place for this, doing things like syncing the actual WooCommerce orders with the revenue over so that we can see them in revenue reports in Groundhogg, that's something that will probably happen over the next year. But it is not as deep of an integration as you're used to if you're running Groundhogg on the same site. So that is something to keep in mind. I will just show a quick bit about the event tracking because it's something we've been working on lately. So that's over here. And for all of these different plugins that we support, you can set a trigger and then an event. So I mentioned logging in. So we can say the user logged in and it will send this over to Groundhogg. And we could even take, let's see, like, we have IP address in here. No, we don't. Okay. Well, anyway. So when somebody logs in, this would send an event to Groundhogg, and you would see logged in with their username and the page they logged in on. If you're using LearnDash, for example, we can sync course progress over to the Groundhogg contact record. So let's say we'll do course progress, the name of the course they progressed on, and then the last lesson, topic, or quiz that they completed. I can just save that. And let me make sure that they're logged there. Turn that on. So I'll go to a course now, and I'll just click complete on something. Let's see, lesson 2. So I can mark this complete. And then if we look at the logs, we're tracking the events, the course progress, the name of the course, the lesson I just completed, and that got sent over to the activity feed on the contact record of my contact in Groundhogg. So you can see I progressed and the name of the lesson. If I wanted to track quiz scores, we could do quiz completed, and then we'll say quiz completed with the quiz title. And then I want to know the student's score so that I can maybe send a follow-up email if they need some extra attention. So put in the quiz completed, quiz title, and the score. And when the quiz is submitted, it will show up over here. Oops, too many tabs. It will show up over here in the timeline again on Groundhogg. So yeah, that's kind of something we've been having fun with lately, because if you have spent a lot of time with these marketing automation tools, you can end up with a lot of tags. You can see here, I also set a tag to be applied when the lesson was complete. You can imagine if I had a lot of courses and a lot of students, and I wanted to track where they were in their courses, and all I had available to me is tags, I could end up easily with 100 tags here. And they're not in order, and they don't really give you any context to, you know, did they do course A before course B, or did they fail the quiz and then give up on that course and then go to another course? So, so yeah, this is something we're pretty excited about being able to offer with Groundhogg over the REST API, is being able to sync these events. And it is kind of basic now, just having a few plugins, but you can imagine when we add GameyPress, and you could say, person earned a new badge and earned 20 points, and we would have that show up over here in the activity feed. And we may even work with Groundhogg to be able to filter not just WPFusion, but what plugin inside of WPFusion triggered the event. So yeah, that's what I've been geeking out about lately. So we just go back to, I mean, I think that's kind of the gist of it, that if we just go back to my list of things I wanted to cover, we talked about events, and then I have this set up already so I can show you, but yeah, we usually would use tags to trigger funnels, because like I mentioned, because this is a separate site, Groundhogg can't do the actual WooCommerce product was purchased trigger, but WP Fusion applies the tag over the API, Groundhogg can detect that, and it works the same way. So I had a tag set here, it's triggered by the purchase hoodie tag, it sends a welcome email. So it works, the end result is basically the same, but you do, again, it's not quite as tight as having those native integrations because we have to standardize everything into fields, events, and tags, just to make it work with so many plugins without too much extra rebuilding everything. Testing, yep. I won't get into this in too much detail, but we also have, you can, with the advanced features add-on for Groundhogg, you can create webhooks, outgoing webhooks, which are triggered by a tag being applied. And let's say I had a courses subdomain. I decided to split it up into 3 sites. I could have this tag gets applied for purchase membership. The tag would trigger a webhook to the courses subdomain. And when that's received, WP Fusion on that domain will import a new WordPress user based on the Groundhogg contact record and send them a link to log into the course domain. And of course, WP Fusion lets you control access to courses and memberships based on tags. So when the new user is imported, their Groundhogg tags get loaded, and then they can access whatever courses or memberships they purchased on the WooCommerce site. And it's all being controlled within Groundhogg. If you want to, you can go to their contact record and just remove the access tag and they'll lose access to the course. So it's not really a membership plugin, but it's an interesting way of doing things, just turning Groundhogg tags into sort of like a flexible access control system. If they have the tag, they can get in. If they don't have the tag, they can't. And yeah, so then that's about it. With 20 minutes left, we can take questions. And yeah, right. I will stop sharing my screen. I don't know, Mike, is there supposed to be a, how does this work?
Yeah, so if anyone has questions now, feel free to just put it in the chat.
Or if you guys want any more information on any particular part of it, or if anything wasn't clear. Crickets. Nice.
I think we got one.
Yeah. Do I recommend to work with subdomains? If it were for us, so for WPFusion.com, we currently use ActiveCampaign. It's very expensive. And I could imagine us within the next year switching to Groundhogg. And if we did that, we would start off right away with it on a subdomain, because we have a few different product websites and they all need to update the same marketing list because we share customers between them and we personalize our marketing emails depending on which product the person has bought from which site. So for us, we would start off with a subdomain because we need to have data from a few different businesses on the one contact record. If you were just starting a brand new site, like I said, I would probably prefer to do it all in one and then see how things go. And then if you need to scale, it's easy to split out later. But yeah, I don't know. It's hard to say. There's no clear rule for what to do. It depends on what you're comfortable with. And of course, doing it on a separate site is a little bit more of a technical setup. Yeah, so I don't have a clear answer on that one. Is WP Fusion able to work with WaaS? Yes. It's well, there are a few different ways you can do that. We have some customers who install it on their WaaS, and then it basically copies over to each new site, and then the end user can set it up. I've seen a couple of customers who have completely white labeled it, and they call it marketing integrations, and they have a headless WaaS with their own custom page builder, and WP Fusion just exists as like a menu. It's really nice looking. It's like a pop-up, and it says like, which marketing tool do you want to integrate with? Click here, and they've built a wizard to connect you through it. So yeah, you can do WaaS simple or go WaaS crazy, but yeah, that works. And do we offer service to set some of these things up? We don't directly, but we have what we call an experts program, which is here. And I will now hopefully properly put the link into the chat. The experts program are all people that I've worked with personally and known for a long time, and they have different strengths and backgrounds, which you can see. Like David primarily works with Drip, but we have some people in here who work with Groundhogg, and I trust them to do a good job of getting you set up and doing things the right way. Should the subdomain be on a separate server? That's a good question. It can be, certainly. In this example that we were doing now, it was not. It was on the same server, but the public-facing site, I had on a lot of caching, and I had Cloudflare running, and I had the security turned up really high because it's a public site. The CRM site, I had very, very little caching and no security because I basically have everything locked down. Not worried about people getting in there. And I could even, if I wanted to, I could take the CRM site and via Cloudflare, I could just block access to it for everything except my home office IP address, which means I'm the only person who can log in. And you wouldn't have to worry about bots or brute force or anything like that. It's just, that's your own private CRM that only you can get into. So that's another benefit. But it certainly wouldn't cause a problem to run it on a separate server. And if you found that you were having performance issues, yeah, certainly that's an option. Mm-hmm. Unrelated sites using Groundhogg and sitting here wondering if I should run them on one combined instance. Yeah, I mean, for me, like I mentioned, we share customers across a few different products, and someone in pre-sales for one product might become a paying customer on another. So I like to see their whole interaction history with us going back years, and we have that connected into our help desk too, so we can see when they first talked to us and all that stuff. So I really find it valuable to have the complete picture. I don't know how hard it would be to merge two Groundhogg sites into one. You would have to just make sure that two contacts who share the same ID don't end up overwriting each other, but I'm sure there are ways to do that without too much trouble. Yeah, and I didn't really touch on security too much, but I mean, obviously you need security on a WordPress website, but also the more security you have, the more problems. So I know, for example, if you have your security turned up to 11 in Cloudflare, that can end up blocking external cron services that need to reach Groundhogg, or you know, it can stop webhooks from going out or coming in, that kind of thing. So there's a benefit to having a public-facing site where you know people are going to be trying to break into it, and you can have things really cranked up there. And you know, maybe sometimes somebody can't log in or the password resets don't work or whatever, but like, you know, you can sort that out for them. But then with Groundhogg being on a subdomain, you can just completely lock it off to everything except a few endpoints or few IP addresses that need to access it, and then it's going to work more reliably, and you don't have to worry about things getting caught in security rules or firewall rules that are meant to protect you from people trying to visit your public site illegitimately. Cool. Let me see. Yeah, so that's all I've got. And I don't think there are any more questions. So, ooh. Tagging when links are clicked. Yes, I can show you what that looks like. It's a little bit different. I'll show you in our documentation. Is it possible to tag people when links are clicked? So we have a feature that lets you put a data attribute on a link like this, data apply tags 1, 2, 3, or you can put it on a button, or you can even, if you're using Elementor or the block editor, you can put it on any section, element, or block. And that will, when the element is clicked, just like we saw with the logs sending the data over to Groundhogg for the WooCommerce checkout, it will send the tags over for the click. I'm lost now. So you would see the same thing. You'd see the page the person was on, and they clicked the thing, and the tag getting applied. It's not the same as Groundhogg's page tracking, where every page view is tracked. We are looking into ways of making that working. I was talking with Adrian about it. It is a little bit of a performance concern because, you know, somebody might visit 50 pages over on this site, and do you really want that hitting your Groundhogg server 50 times with each page view? But it's something we might look into adding as an option. Best way to hold the fields from Groundhogg in sync. Can you clarify a little? What do you mean by hold the meta fields? I see. Okay. If you are sending, so for example, if Integromat sends data directly into Groundhogg, sure, okay. Yeah, we've got you covered there. If I'm understanding you correctly. Let me just clear out some of these tabs. Sounds good. So we have a shortcode that lets you display CRM data in WordPress, and that's pretty commonly used when you need to personalize the page based on somebody's contact record. So in this example, we could show them a date field showing when their exam is, or we could show their assigned sales rep. That's as simple as just dropping this shortcode into a page. So if I was on the public-facing site or the membership site, I can put the shortcode here. You can send data from Integromat into Groundhogg on the CRM subdomain, and this shortcode will load the data out of the CRM subdomain and into the membership site and then display it to the person. So it's a couple steps, but yeah, you could send data into Groundhogg using Integromat and then display it for the member on the front of your site. Oops, I think I didn't share my screen for that, but anyway, I'll put the link. Sorry. Anyway, that's the link for displaying data. It's just a shortcode. It loads a value off of the contact record and then displays it. And yeah, it can be loaded and displayed on the page almost instantly. It takes, depending on how fast your site is, like half a second to make the API call. And yeah, it would work on even if you had 10 different sites connected to one Groundhogg subdomain. Integromat adds a record or adds a field update to the CRM subdomain, and that field change can be displayed on all 10 sites that are connected to Groundhogg via WP Fusion.